Well, we've come to the end of this first section in Revelation with the 7 letters to the 7 churches. This letter to Laodicea is probably one of the most memorable, with some of the clearest takeaway verses that are used to this day. So let's try to unpack some of these fascinating images. Revelation 3:14 through 22. Write this to the angel of the church in Laodicea. These are the words of the Amen, the faithful and true witness, the ruler of God's creation. I know your works. You are neither cold nor hot. I wish that you were either cold or hot. So, because you are lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth. After all, you say, I'm rich and I've grown wealthy and I don't need a thing. You don't realize that you are miserable, pathetic, poor, blind, and naked. My advice is that you buy gold from me that has been purified by fire, so that you may be rich, and white clothing to wear, so that your nakedness won't be shamefully exposed, an ointment to put on your eyes so that you may see. I correct and discipline those whom I love. So be earnest and change your hearts and lives. Look, I'm standing at the door knocking. If any hear my voice and open the door, I will come into them and be with them, and will have dinner with them, and they will have dinner with me. As for those who emerge victorious, I will allow them to sit on my throne, just as I emerged victorious and sat down with my Father on his throne. If you can hear, listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches. Well, this is the last letter before we get into all of the visions of Revelation, and it's probably one of the more famous ones. 2 really famous verses probably jumped out at you. We talk in the church a lot about this image of not being lukewarm, right? Because you are lukewarm, neither cold nor hot, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth. That comes from right here. And then this famous image, there's plenty of paintings of Jesus standing at the door knocking, and then us inviting him in. So we're going to get to that. It's actually really helpful and illuminating to understand a little bit about Laodicea to kind of get into this. So some of the background here. Where does this cold and hot image come from? Why is he berating them about believing that they're rich and that they've grown wealthy and they don't need a thing in particular? There's some actual really interesting geographical and historical connections here. Maybe really quick on the rich one. I actually was looking this up, and so Laodicea was known for multiple reasons as a place of riches. They had a really kind of like high quality medical facility for its day, obviously, and so probably connecting here why Jesus is telling them, you should buy ointment from me. They think that they're the ones that provide the medicine for the world. They also there's a moment in AD 61 where there was a big earthquake, and it's actually written down in the record books. Laodicea, like other places, got financial aid and help from Rome itself. Laodicea, in their pride, said, literally, we don't need a thing. We have enough, we're rich enough, we can handle this by ourselves. And so they actually refused help from Rome. So it seems like, John writing this probably knows this story here. And so this is they're complacent. They're kind of sitting on their wealth, right? Starts to make me think a lot of us in the West today. Maybe this Laodicea has a lot to say to me and to you. The other thing about the cold and hot, let's do the little geography lesson here. So Laodicea, it's right here, and to the north there were these hot springs, like mineral hot springs. You couldn't drink that water, but it was actually used in medicinal purposes. And so it was a kind of a famous place called, I think it was the Hierapolis. But there's these hot springs to the north. And then to the south, there was this fresh, cold water, this mountain snow water to the south. And so they would try to cart the hot spring water to Laodicea and the cold mountain spring water to Laodicea. You could drink this. This was life-giving. This was like medicinal. This was life-giving, refreshing, actual drinkable water. But the problem is, in the miles and miles between these two things, by the time the hot spring water got to Laodicea, you guessed it was lukewarm. And by the time the mountain snow, life-giving water got to Laodicea, it was also lukewarm. So that was, with all their wealth and comfort, that was probably one of the negative parts of Laodicea, is that all the water there was lukewarm. And different commentators have pointed this out. I feel like they're right. Sometimes we take this and we just choose, well, one of them must be good and one bad. So you don't want to be cold in your faith, you want to be hot in your faith. But that doesn't make a lot of sense, because Jesus wants us to be either hot or cold. And I think the emphasis here is that hot is good and cold is good. Both are good, but the problem is the lukewarmness is not good. It makes you have this gag reflex. And so the hot springs, if you were to travel up to the Hierapolis, that was medicinal. And so it was healing and medicinal. The cold springs, if you traveled south to the actual source, this was a life-giving source of water. The problem was, in the intervening time to get here, both kind of became a little unpalatable. And sometimes even they can make you sick, right? If they were sitting out too far. And so the problem is being lukewarm in any sense. But actually, to be hot or cold in a way, maybe in different ways, to be hot would be, to use directly the metaphor, is to be more medicinal and healing. To be cold is to be life-giving and refreshing. And Jesus says, look, be one of these, but stop this lukewarmness in your faith. So that's something here, and he's speaking directly to a metaphor that they would immediately have understood. They're sitting in their comfort, their pride. They think that they can handle anything. They don't need a thing. And Jesus is really correcting that. And it's a great call for us in the West. Whenever we're tempted to rest on our riches, on our accomplishments, on our whatever, to actually really take to heart this word of Jesus, that we are actually, in God's eyes, miserable, pathetic, poor, blind, naked. We need to be clothed by Jesus, anointed by Jesus, to be healed and forgiven by Him alone. And then another kind of segue, let's talk about this door knocking really briefly. But one, the kind of cliche image is that the doors are hard and Jesus is knocking and He wants to come in with us. I think it's, and that's fine. On the whole, that's fine. But really, this is an image of the church as a whole. Jesus is coming to His house, and it's talking to a whole community. It's talking to the whole community of Laodicea. And so it's this image of the master coming home to his house. There's a great parable that I think could help illuminate this here in Luke. I think it's Luke 12. Yeah, Luke 12 talks about the master coming and the servants letting the master in when the master knocks. And so it's this image not of Jesus knocking on our heart and coming and making a place with us, but it's of Jesus coming to His own, to His church. And the danger is maybe the church isn't going to let Him in. I feel like there's a parallel here to that first letter to the Ephesians in chapter 2 of Revelation, where Jesus is warning that He might take their lampstand. You can go back and review that. Here, it's a similar kind of fear. There, Jesus is saying, I'm going to take your lampstand. You're no longer going to be the presence of God in the world. And here, the fear is that what if the church has so rejected Jesus that when Jesus comes and knocks, they don't even want Him there. They're fine doing it all on their own. They're saying, hey, Jesus, we got this thing. We're doing it just fine without you. And Jesus is saying, look, I'm coming. Will you actually come and have a meal with me? Will you let me in? Will you let me heal you and refresh you and clothe you? And will you have an actual relationship with me? And so what does that look like for Jesus to be knocking on our door as a community, as a church? And the danger of, have we lived in such a way, have we conducted ourselves in such a way that we actually aren't letting Jesus in?